I've been in rooms before where it's like it's the quarterly business readout, the annual business readout. And we marketing, we were really proud because we had a killer quarter. So we get up, we show our slides, 120% to goal, crushed our MQL count, everything else. And then sales goes next and they announce they missed revenue targets, pipeline targets by 15%. I'm like, huh, there's a disconnect there.
Welcome to Move the Needle, the show where we explore how teams turn data into growth. Real stories, proven playbooks. Let's get into it.
All right, cool. Let's do this thing. So let's kick it off now. If you're new, just turning in, I mean, you've probably seen this if you registered for the event, but the interview today, Sam's talking about how to craft a marketing plan to hit your company goals. Sam's been on the show before. I asked him specifically to come back and cover this topic because if you want, you can go back and listen. You can like search metrics and chill in Spotify or Apple or whatever and go find Sam's name there. And he had a really, really good episode talking very practically on how to like hit significantly increased goals on less of a budget. But as part of that interview, he went through this like robust planning process he goes through. And I was like, you know what? Planning is something that like everyone has headaches with. Would you come back on and talk about it? And he was gracious enough to accept. So thanks for coming back on.
Hey, way to let me channel my inner geek with this. It's win-win.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, if you're not already, follow Sam on LinkedIn. He's always posting like screenshots and stuff of like his spreadsheets and whatever. You're like one of the more practical people that you can follow and learn a lot from. So I love it. All right, let's jump right in so we can be quick with it. I know you have a hard out at 2. So let's start here. Fundamentally, why is aligning your marketing plan with company goals important? What goes wrong when that doesn't happen?
Let's tell a story. I've been in rooms before. One of my first companies I was at, and no fault of anyone in this. This was just the nature of goals and the story I'm going to get into. I've been in rooms before where it's like it's a quarterly business readout, the annual business readout. And I remember sitting in this room and it was the quarterly business readout. You had marketing in the room, sales in the room, CS in the room, leadership in the room. Everyone was all there with their couple slides to go through everything. Well, we marketing, we were really proud because we had a killer quarter. So we get up, we show our slides, 120% to goal, crushed our MQL count, everything else. Like everyone's happy cheering, not really cheering, but in that like business to business kind of way where it's appropriate in a meeting, you can feel the good energy. And then sales goes next and they announce they missed revenue targets, pipeline targets by 15%. I'm like, huh, there's a disconnect there. How is that possible? And granted, like lagging sales cycle, well, I say like pipeline even, things just weren't converting, but that goes to prove the point of things start in a good way and the company has a goal. Hey, we have a revenue target that we want to hit this year. And then it gets passed down to each department to try to figure out, hey, how do you pick up your piece of the pie with this? But what happens is the goals get so diluted and broken down. We try to make goals within goals of sub goals of all of that, where that's MQL goals become a thing. And it loses sight of what's the overarching aim that we're trying to go for. It's driving revenue, it's driving pipeline for the company. And that's, how do you define an MQL? How do you define certain things? Things break down because all of a sudden it's like, well, we have to hit 1,000 leads this quarter. So let's just push that ebook. Let's count this webinar signups as MQLs. And there's different ways of saying like we hit our goal. But if you're not all aligned on like what is our North Star goal? Revenue, pipeline, whatever that is, that's where things start to fall amiss and why it's so important for every team to always remember in the back of their mind, like, hey, you can hit our internal goals, which I wouldn't even say our goals are like indicators. They're metrics to kind of just say, are we on or off course? But at the end of the day, if we're not helping the company meet this North Star goal, we're not doing our job.
Yeah. Yeah. And so to set the stage for everyone listening, like the goal of this interview is that you walk away with 2 things. Number 1, how to address the first problem Sam covered, which is how do you craft a marketing goal that the C-suite or the overall like matches the overall company goals, and they're going to say, yes, you're contributing, you're playing a part in the overall like overarching company goals, and we can get behind it. And then secondly, like how do you craft one you can actually hit? Because like it's one thing to be like, okay, marketing is going to contribute to revenue, right? But like no matter how you measure that, like how do you actually craft one that's fairly accurate, that you're not so high that like you're missing targets left and right, you're updating quarter over quarter, everyone just kind of feels like demoralized and defeated and month over month crap. And then like you're not setting one that's so low that you're not really like stretching yourself or aware of these things. So that's what we're going to get into. So I have a sample scenario. I know you've read through these notes, so I'm not blindsiding you. I thought this might be a fun and practical way to approach it. So we've got this fictitious company called Sassly. It's a product. It's a B2B product, and it sets a company goal of going from, these are really even numbers to keep it simple, they're going from 2 to 3 million in ARR in 2025. So next year they want to add a million in 1 year. So at the highest level, let's start here. You get this company goal. This is the company goal that marketing shares along with sales and other teams, right? How might this goal be divided or shared by sales and marketing respectively? Let's start there. What, like, marketing obviously doesn't own all of it and sales doesn't own all of it. So where do we start with the breakdown?
Yeah. And we're not going to go down the attribution rabbit hole on this conversation because that's another conversation in and of itself. But I just go straight to historicals and I look at, usually you should be tracking whether it's lead source, revenue channel, you're going to name it something within your HubSpot, Salesforce, whatever CRM that you're using. And granted, it's based on some type of attribution. But again, we're trying to carry apples to apples over year. And you can see, okay, what were those that are AE sales sourced? What are those that are BDR sourced? What are those that are marketing sourced? What are those that are partner sourced? Any channels that you have at that level, I'll just go and look at the historical. So, if we've been producing last year, we were at 2 million in ARR. Where did all of that come from in the years past? You might have something like, 40% was marketing sourced, 30% was BDR sourced, 20% was AE sourced, 10% was partner sourced. So I would then take those numbers and say that's kind of like baseline, so to speak. So if we wanted to add another 1 million in net new ARR this year, what do those numbers translate to in terms of that additional 1 million? So 400,000, 300,000, 200,000, and working down in that way. And so that is one of the lenses that I look at just to set the stage, to get some ballpark numbers. And then I start to get into the reality-based questions. Are these numbers realistic based on the resources that we have? Is there anything that we can do to optimize, get more efficient? Or are some of these like, we just need more resources, whether that's individuals, whether that's spend, whether that's time, something else. But I usually just go straight to the historicals in the beginning just to see like, hey, if everyone continues to take the same piece of pie, this is what we do. If we didn't fund marketing at all, and now we want to grow another 1 million and we're already at 2, like there's always going to, and we didn't do any spend or something before, that's probably going to require some type of kickstart, so to speak, to do that. So you can't just expect organic to continue to pick up at a rate that it's never done before. So that's where you have to also understand like incremental and what is the reality of like what we'll keep doing, where do we need to push harder. So that's why I say I like to go back to the historicals just to get our lay of the land first. Okay, great. And we are going to, for listeners, we are going to get there. We're going to talk about testing different channels that you might, of like how you might get there. And it's not quite as simple as this, right? So, but for this starting point, I love this. So we have a million gap. Historically, the first 2 million came, like, let's say really even numbers like you gave, 40% from marketing. So a number we could talk about starting is 400,000 then of the 1 million would be responsible. That's if marketing was able to keep going with 40% for this extra million. Something I'm curious about is like, is who are in these conversations, and is there any advice you have for facilitating them? Like before we move, like I want to move past this and get to all like the levers we can pull and stuff and how to accurately forecast what you think you can do to hit that 400,000. That's where we're going to spend the remainder of the episode. But I think we need to just like touch on this because I can imagine a lot of people listening are like, okay, is this a conversation I have with the CEO? Do I have this with the VP of sales? Does like, I'm going to pull these numbers but is everyone going to agree with them? Does sales feel like they can't maintain their percentage and they're going to expect marketing to pick up from it? Like, how do you've been in the trenches. How do you actually like come to agreement on the percentages? Have you found everyone's kind of willing to like, yep, let's just generally say that these hold true for the next million? Or do you find that like, yeah, it's a bit of a negotiation process? Yeah, it's going to be more of the latter. As much as we all wish, like, yep, everything's perfectly linear. You signed on for your another 40% because that's what you did in the past. Doesn't quite work that way. So what you want to do is you either want to get whoever's, we'll just say like the best at pulling data from your CRM, and this is the matter of just speed resourcing. You're talking about different company leadership here. You just want to get these numbers quickly. It's not a matter of like how in-depth and everything else. So whoever can pull these numbers, and then you get everyone in the room together and say, here's what I found. Does anything jump out to you all immediately that just seems like, hey, something's wonky in the data, this doesn't seem right? Or, if everyone agrees like, yep, filters are correct, everything was good enough in the CRM to pull, then you start to say, here's the different options that we could go. We can continue to run at our current run rates. And then you might have the sales rep say, well, actually, I just lost 2 BDR. So the BDR team can't continue to push that rate unless we backfill. And that's where you start to add in the context of everything else. Just with, I'd say, like, even if you were to consider current state, nothing's ever current state. There's always some type of variable, something changing going on. So understanding, okay, if we were to just continue from here on today, what do we need to know? What do we need to keep in mind? And then you start to get into the future state, the delta of it, and say, okay, like if we were to grow now sales, like if you need to pick up an extra 30%, can you do it? Do the AEs have capacity? Do the BDRs have capacity? Marketing, is this going to continue with our current spends? Are we going to continue to stay as efficient as we are? Do we have the channels to support it? Do we have the people to execute it? And that's where you just start to get into some of those questions to see, does anything jump out that you need to address before you can start to commit to these numbers? And that's where you'll probably play with the numbers a little bit too. And it doesn't even have to be a peanut butter spread over the course of the year where marketing covers 40% Q1, Q2, Q3, Q4. It could be like, marketing is going to ramp up over time, or BDRs, sales is going to cover them for a little bit longer while the BDRs get ramped, or vice versa with the AEs. You can play with all of that. And that's the beauty of it. You're not locking yourself into this 12-month over and over and over, same exact thing. That's where if you have a true aligned, good GTM team where you'll trust each other, you can cover for one another, which is what you want in a perfect GTM ecosystem.
Okay, awesome. As a quick follow-up, are we looking at 1 year of historical data, 2 years of historical data, as much as we have? What do you recommend? How, obviously, you can get so far back that it's kind of irrelevant because the things were very different back then, but how far back are we looking to get these percentages as a starting point for the conversation?
Yeah, it's going to depend on your company, to be honest. How long have you all been around? We're talking about going from 2 to 3 million in revenue. So this is a small company. It hasn't been growing a long time. You'd probably want to look at more recent trends. If you're a publicly traded company, if you're in 100 millions, 50 millions, you can probably, I would look back at a couple of years because things will be, you've got process in place. You've got operations in place. So those are the things I would keep in mind. But short side, absolutely a year. But from my example, I'm looking at 2 years. We're a company, we're privately held. I can't disclose numbers. We got 75 employees. So I can give you a sense of where we're about at. But I look at about 2 years worth of data because that's when I've been here for that long. I know processes, I know what's been in place, so I can be able to put my asterisk next to anything that seems a little bit different and be able to run from there.
Awesome. Love it. I got a comment from a listener, and I see this cool little show on stream button, so I'm going to test it out now. Nathaniel says, could Sam speak just a bit closer to the mic? Your sound's a bit low. I'm hearing you great, but in order to honor, thank you for pointing that out, Nathaniel. Oh yeah, you do sound clear now. Thanks. Thank you for pointing that out there. Perfect. And I got to test out this cool feature, which I wanted. This will be great for the Q&A at the end. All right, awesome. So the first step is look at the historic data. How many years back is going to depend on your situation. You're going to look at what the standard percentages have been, and then you're going to come to an agreement, have a conversation with the team, come to an agreement of what percentage the breakdown. You want to divide the gap of what you're trying to grow that year. Now, at a high level, so let's keep the even number we've had. You want to grow 1 million, and the 40% is what everyone shakes hand agrees on. So marketing, in this case, is responsible for 400,000. What are the high level steps you would take to begin planning that down? So now you've got to get this 400,000, which is more than that much more than you got last time. Do you take a top down approach? Do you take a bottoms up approach? Do you do both? How do you think about that?
Yeah, definitely take both. So let's define real quick, bottoms up, top down, what the heck do these mean? Because I even had to refresh myself. I was like, I know these, but I can't define them right now.
I was going to ask you to do this, so I'm glad you said it.
So bottoms up is basically what did we do this year and with what resources? So that's spend, that's people, that's time, anything else. And then top down is what's the target next year and what do we need to supply in order to achieve that? And then you want to find the delta is going to be somewhere sitting in between those. So what I like to start with is the bottoms up, and that's where I'll drill into the marketing specific side. And I've actually got a model that I can show you. I love my data charts.
This is why I had you on.
So,
I knew you were going to share a spreadsheet at some point or something.
You knew it. I couldn't resist. I can't help myself. So this is an example of one, again, round numbers for purposes, but I call it a simple funnel, so to speak. So how much are you spending in variable marketing, hand raiser, high intent. So whether that's demo requests, if you're PLG, signups, things like that. What are the costs per demos? What's your conversion rate to qualified opportunity? Count of those, cost per SQO, win rate, won deals, ACV. And that gets you to how much ARR are you producing? What might your target be? And what are your different spend and CACs? So that's what I have in here. And then I like to always keep myself honest a little bit, what are really rough industry benchmarks? Sometimes you'll get this question from leadership, what should we be aiming for? And that's always a good question. I don't know. And that's where you can use historicals, but then you can also use what are organizations that have optimized this well? What are they seeing? What is potential? Because this is where it's also going to help us stay grounded in reality. So In the example here, we'll say, we used to spend $50,000 per month. Here's how many demos we got, opportunities, won deals, so on and so forth. You can see 25-month CAC payback period. That's not great. That means it's over 2 years before you recoup your money. Hopefully you're selling 3-year contracts to be revenue positive, but if you're selling 1-year deals, have fun with that. This is common in B2B SaaS, unfortunately. So moving from this is where we have a couple different levers that we can play with. And what I like to do with leadership especially is walk them through each one separately so they understand just how big of a push would be needed for marketing in each one of these spots before we aggregate it all together and show like, oh, this is all really realistic. We can actually do this. But the first one you're always going to get is spend. So let's say, okay, your ARR target ad, let's say marketing had to cover like the 1 million gap. You can play with numbers to understand, we used to spend 600,000. We're gonna have to spend over 2 million to cover that. But, let's say if we wanted to get back to the, I need to put that into million. What happens if we need to cover 400,000? You could say, okay, like we're getting close. We're getting closer. So 800, you're probably gonna have to be about 825. You're gonna have to 50% your budget. And again, if you're a smaller startup where you're only bringing in 2 million in ARR, like this is a hefty chunk of change. You're probably not going to get a CFO to fully say like, yeah, let's do it. Let's give you this more budget. So say, cool. Okay. Let's talk about some of our next levers. And this is cost per demo. And so what this is going to be a function of, and what I like to talk about down here, we'll share this afterwards so everyone can have access to it. But this is usually a function of your targeting. So with your ads, with your messaging, who you have following your podcast, your LinkedIn people, you can curate your feeds very much. This is to show, okay, if we wanted to hit to the 400,000, so let's bring this back up. We're probably gonna have to bring this down somewhere in the $700 range from $1,000. That's still a pretty steep jump. I mean, even what I look at in my day-to-day, like we'll fluctuate $25 per quarter, $50 per quarter. It's not anything heavy. So this is gonna have to be some big changes that you would have to play here. So again, that's a function of targeting and channel optimization. So it could be, I like to pick on Google because it's easy, it's last touch. There's keywords out there that $100 per click. If you find that you're getting a cost per conversion of $1,500 for a keyword, $2,000 for a keyword, but it's not turning into qualified opportunities or won deals, you can pull that and put it into other channels that are seeing that lower amount. So that's where you can reallocate those existing funds, and that's where you might see some of these decreases if you were to make those types of changes. Next lever I like to get into is the demo to qualified opportunity conversion rate. And honestly, this is my favorite one. This is the easiest one. I think this is one that so many marketers and organizations leave on the table. And what this is looking at is your current state. Someone raises their hand, they want to talk to sales, get them on the discovery call, give them the demo, they're qualified. And okay, so we're getting us to 400,000. Let's jump this to, let's call it, 32%, not even that, 25%. I mean, this is actually, and you can see how realistic this is. This is a matter of taking your very top of funnel, and the closer you are to the higher number, the more this is going to impact the bottom of the funnel, which is why I love this one. It's so underused and under leveraged. So we'll call it 22%. It's only a 6% uptick, and that's still well below industry benchmark. So this is very realistic. And so to put this in perspective, I put down here, this is like, how do you let your prospects self-serve schedule? Because this is where the biggest handoff fallout occurs. You're playing chase with the different demos, prospects of people who are trying to sign up or anything else. And then you have BDRs chasing them, sales chasing them. It might take a week before you get in touch. You line on something. It's not a good process. It's not helpful for the prospect. So this is why I love tools like Chili Piper. I'm not a partner, I'm not affiliated, but pop that on your website and it lets them choose the date, the time that they will have that. And it will also route them to the person. You can create routing rules, which I'll get into in another minute with that. But this honestly is the most inefficient place for most funnels, that when you fix this, you barely have to touch anything else and you can substantially increase the results that you're going after.
Why do you think it is? It's so funny. We had Adam Goyette on the last live episode, and he touched on this exact area. He honed in on and said this was one of his favorites. Why do you think it is that experienced marketing leaders are like, this is the first place they go, but I've heard a couple of you now say like, this is, so many people miss it. Why is that? Is that because like our minds just go to like, oh, we have to bring in more, like more inbound, more leads, more like whatever, more attention, and this just isn't something that we think about? Or is it assumed like, oh, sales will take care of that? Or like, why do you think this gets missed so much?
I think a couple different things. One is this kind of sits in no man's land. Who's responsible for that handoff? Is it marketing? Is it sales? Is it operations? Well, if you have an operations team, maybe. The other half is just the predictable revenue model is so rooted in a lot of leadership's head where they're not always thinking about this. It's just, it is more. It's how do we spend more? How do we do more? How do we get more? And that's just the default. And why I like to say, look at your funnel, not just as what do we have to fill up more with? Like, instead of having it be so narrow, what can we do to just fatten it out a little bit? What can we do to improve that side of it? And especially now in today's day and age where it's like monopoly money's gone. Interest rates are not letting people invest the money that they want into their companies. How do you make the most with what you have? Because it's really wild when you can see how leaky buckets are. And that was one of my favorite opportunities at Refine Labs, was working with so many different startups and being able to help them with this and saying, like, you don't have to spend a bunch more. Like, honestly, we can really clean up and improve your pipelines by just making this one small tweak. So very easy, low lift. I think the other thing is it's not sexy. At the end of the day, it's not something you take to the board and be like, look what this new marketing leader did in their first 30 days. It's like, it's a small piece of tech. It's not shiny, it's not pretty, but it gets the job done.
Yeah, I love it. And for anyone who missed it, can you just reinforce before we move on past this, the difference between top down and bottoms up planning? Because I love the way that you distinguish these two.
Yeah. So bottoms up is like, what did we do this year and with what resources? So just what's our historical run rate? What did marketing produce? What did sales produce? Top down is what is the new target that we're being given and what do we need to do in order to achieve that? So right now, like what we're looking at here is really the top down side of saying, okay, here was our run rate. Top down is now saying, okay, here's our new target, which would be the 400,000, and then understanding what are the different levers that we can play with in order to cover that gap. And so like here, this is the gap, so to speak, with one variable that we'd be looking at. Right.
Okay. Awesome. I love it. All right. Now, when we do look, so let's get to the stage now where at this point we've identified how we've historically performed. We've locked in. We've agreed with leadership on a percentage that marketing is going to source of this new $1 million revenue goal. We've done the top down and bottoms up to determine like what we would need to hit. Now, I want to talk about some of the selecting some of these levers. Like I know that we talked about. You're a big fan of some of these like more down funnel, unsexy things, but I'm curious for your take on like. I want to cover two areas we haven't yet, which is one is existing channels that have some historic performance. So maybe you've been running SEO for a while and it's driving some amount of results, or you have been running Google ads, whatever. So existing marketing specific channels. And then I want to talk about new channels that you like think it's like, where do you even start with estimating the impact that they could have on this plan? So I guess first, let's do existing. Most people listening probably have one or two channels that are currently working, right? It might be just the founder posting on LinkedIn. It might be YouTube. It might be SEO. It might be Google ads or Facebook ads. You and I have talked in the past, like there's a law of diminishing returns here. And I think that's important for listeners to know. So when you're saying, we've got to increase this much more. What can we expect to get out of our existing channels? How do you think about how much you can ask out of your existing channels before like these diminishing returns start to come into effect?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we'll look at this through two different angles. One is if we're going from 2 to 3 million, you probably don't have a big marketing budget. You need to be very careful not to pick too many channels because you will peanut butter yourself too thin and you will be putting pennies toward platforms that might sound like a lot, $25,000 towards one platform, but $30,000 towards a platform. When you break that down, that's $3,000 a day. So you target 3 different regions, that's $1,000 a day. Like it spends very fast. So you need to be careful with that. But yeah, the law of diminishing returns and what we look at. So marketers, sales reps, recruiters, they love LinkedIn. It's a great space to spend time. So that's for many, it's a primary channel. Others use Facebook, others use Reddit, others use Twitter, YouTube, you like you said. On a lot of them, what I like about the ad platform is the data that it gives you. Even if you don't spend, you can set up campaigns, so to speak, to get some rough numbers and estimates when you add in your targeting criteria to understand how many people are even on this platform that we would want to get in touch with. So in my example, we go after recruiters. So using round numbers that say that it shows I want to go after these titles within the recruiting and staffing industry, there's 100,000 people I could go after. We know on LinkedIn and most social media platforms, it's only about like 40% of users will be regular users. So that then says, okay, you'll be able to probably reach, if you fully funded it, 40,000 of those individuals. And then what you can do is you can go in and understand with your spend, and it shows CPM, CPCs. You can understand, okay, if we have $1,000 per day at $40 a day, I'm not good at mental math. I can't run this number off the top of my head, but based on that, how many people could we reach out of those 100,000? And let's say it's 6,000. Okay, so you have a gap there. You could reach 34,000 more people potentially if you put more money into it. And again, it's not going to be a linear, like keep those same cost per click, cost per conversion. You're going to start to plateau at some point, but
Right.
you could easily ramp that, I'd say, up to like 25%. And you should continue on that linear path, and then it will start to level out a little bit more. So those are the ones where I say, like, find your best performing channels and get to that point where you do encroach on the point of diminishing returns with not quite hitting them. That's when I would usually start to explore going in other places or investing heavily in other places. So that's from the paid side, though. Pick a couple platforms. On the organic side, that's different. You can be everywhere because it's only costing you resource, time, head count, those items. So if SEO is strong for you, and this is an example I just learned, had to relearn for myself the other day. It's always like, oh, SEO is going, like, it's not as important, blah, blah, blah. You have to remember, if you're listening here, you're probably an innovator or an early adopter in most things. You're always looking for what's new, what's different. You have a growth mindset. But the reality is there is the early majority and the late majority who are still doing a lot of things how it's always been done. They don't like change. They like just going to Google to get their answers. And that's completely fine. So you want to make sure that you're continuing to show up for those people in the ways that they like to search, that they like to research, and everything else. So SEO is one where I'd say, like, that's a timeless one if you're doing it correctly. You know, it doesn't have to be a huge volume play. Updating existing articles that have done well, linking to previous ones, building off of them, sharing them, but that can be a light one. Organic, find the place where your audience is spending their time at the end of the day. So we like to talk about LinkedIn, but we're, again, marketers, recruiters, sales reps. That's where our audience spends their time. So understand where your audience is. I used to work with a number of organizations who were recruiting, selling to web developers, and they'd push LinkedIn and then find nothing happens. It's like, well, they don't spend their time there. You need to go understand where they're at. It's
Right.
Reddit, it's Quora, it's all of those other places. So you can get very active in those channels and join conversation, everything else. And do it in a way that's helpful, though. You're not pitching your product, not talking about, like, hey, look at how great Loxo is, look at how great Databox is, but just genuinely help. And people will start to understand based on the conversations that you're joining in, what you're doing. That's going to build trust. That's going to build credibility that will lead to the brand awareness for you. So when time comes, they'll speak positively about you, which is what you want at the end of the day. So organic, you can do in any other number of ways. I guess I want to stop for a second. I've been rambling here for
No,
a minute.
it's good. It's all good.
We're on a short time.
I do want to ask, when it comes to, so whether it's paid or organic, you've got these existing ones, and assuming you've got enough historical data to sort of forecast what you think, what role they can play in filling the gap that you've got now. What is your take on two things? One, when do you think, like, should people not try a diversity of channels until they find that one that you mentioned that's, like, really predictable, really, like, do you focus on, I know, like, Chris at Refine Labs, where you used to work, right, is a big believer in this, like, idea of, I forget if you call it, like, something stacking, like channel stacking or something, but I think it's this idea of, like, you wait until you find, like, the one or two channels that are, like, generating proven revenue and that you can really start to scale before you sort of start experimenting with the next one or the next one. Are you a fan of that, or are you a fan of, like, at different stages of companies maybe trying three at once or whatever?
I lean more towards his direction, not fully in that camp, but I definitely don't go towards, like, try three different ones at once because of what we know about dark social and other things. You're rarely going to get the attribution to understand what variables are working, because when you just take a step back and get to the statistical lens of this, a lot of these are going to be coming through direct, organic. They're going to just follow up with that BDR who'd sent them an email a while ago, pick up the phone randomly at the right time. And if you've got too many new things coming in and you just see an influx in organic direct, everyone listening to this has probably got the question, like, oh, let's invest more in SEO. Organic's working. It's like, well, we didn't actually launch any new blog posts. We didn't see any rises in our organic ranking position, but it's been a result of people are now more familiar with your brand because of these things, but you're not sure where it came from, especially if you're not using, like, a self-reported attribution or uncovering that in the sales discovery call to ask them. Just, like, spend 5 minutes. Hey, where'd you come across us? What were you researching? What'd you hear? And understanding all of that. So that's why, from a data standpoint, I'm usually in the camp of don't add too many variables at once, because you're not going to know what is and isn't effective, or you'll misattribute something to being more or less effective than it may have been.
Awesome. Okay. I know we are like at time for the Q&A. I've got some burning questions, so this is what we're going to do. I want to ask you some burning, but we're going to turn them into lightning round questions. So these can be like your fast, simple responses, and then I'll go back and pick at them if we run out of listener questions. All right. So the one that's been on my mind this whole time, how do you accurately forecast when you've got this, in our example, $400,000 we have to cover in 2025. We know what our historicals we think we can get them to do, and now we've got to fill the gap. Let's say we went down and we did some of the further down funnel stuff, like getting people to show up on sales calls and everything you covered. But now part of our plan is we bet that this 1 or 2 new channels, so we're going to get into YouTube this year, or we're going to start doing LinkedIn impression-based ads. Without having tried it yet, how can we get an accurate sense, or how do you think about that? Like what, putting down on paper what you should expect out of that, or would you not even put a number till you could know? But how do you think about that when it comes to putting new levers that you're trying to pull for next year's plan?
Yeah, that's a good one. I won't commit to a number, or if I do, it's very, 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 very conservative. I'll estimate 1, maybe 2 deals, something else from it, very low volume, until it's proven out. Because that's the hard part, especially when you get down to, as we said, like channel attribution. Was it really that channel? Was it something else? It's hard to know. But I would be conservative for the first quarter, and I would also have very strict stop, start, continue criteria with this to validate along the way. Because this is one thing that we marketers, like, we love to be right. We love to take big swings and be proven that we're right. And we'll stick to things longer than we usually should to try to prove that we're right. So having specific criteria for yourself where say, like, this needs to happen 1 quarter, 2 quarters from now. If we're not seeing this, we need to evaluate. Is it the channel itself? Is it the playbook that we're using within the channel that's the issue? And then reevaluate, like, do we continue this? Do we stop and go back to a channel that we know has worked well, that we aren't at the point of diminishing returns at, or something else? But yeah, that's a hard one. And I'd usually tee that up with the leadership as like, that's an experiment. I would keep that on the side of the funnel. Like, what's the worst case scenario? What's the best case scenario? But we have to hit this goal regardless. So I don't want to include this in the funnel unless we have incremental spend, incremental resources to apply towards this. Okay,
so this is a good point. So then you gave an example of our audience is blank and they're really not on LinkedIn that much. Maybe it is time to experiment in the latter 2 quarters with this private forum that they all hang out on, or whatever it may be.
Exactly. And unless you have a fully optimized funnel, your demo to SQO rates killer, your win rates killer, like, all you can literally do is add more, then I would say, yeah, start forecasting like what adding new channels, because that's literally your only lever left. Like, you can't raise ACVs crazy amounts. You can't increase your win rates any further. I mean, maybe a smidge, but when that becomes your next truly big lever, then you can start to do that. But that's for you to say, like, hey, these are hypotheses, best case, worst case.
Okay, awesome. All right, another lightning round question. How do you adjust strategy if you're off course? So you're in Q2 and you're like, crap, we are not on track for this goal that we projected.
Yeah, it really does. It goes back to just like, is it a channel problem? Is it an execution problem? And take the time to really evaluate it and look at it, and also like take off your marketer hat for a quick second and say, like, would I engage with this? How does this come across? And I'll do some customer research, prospect research, call 20 of them to understand, like, are you spending time on this channel? Yes, no. Like, have you seen this? Yes, no. Like, just start to understand some different things there and gather that information for you. But that's a tough one where, especially if you're on a short timeline, it's having the exit criteria for yourself of when you need to opt out and get back into something. That's where I would have a plan B kind of set up for the team. Hey, this does not work. We need to pivot quick. We know it'll at least like work. We have opportunity to just put some money into this channel so things don't fall apart. Like, what is that channel? Is that your LinkedIn? Is that your Facebook? Is that your Google ads? Understand what that is. That, like, no, it's not like the absolute best way to spend your money, but it still does drive results. It's not going to be completely killer for you at the end of the day.
Awesome. Okay. I'm going to jump in to listener questions. If you're, I'll save my last 2 lightning round in case there's no questions at the end. So I've got those teed up. If you are listening, I think even if you're on YouTube or LinkedIn, you can still like type in the chat to the stream and we'll see your message. So If you're on LinkedIn or YouTube, type in and I'll see your message. All right, Nathaniel asks, show on stream. My question for the Q&A, are there any resources or strategies specific to companies who generate revenue from public bids and tenders where subjectivity and brand loyalty is less relevant because contracts are often attributed to the lowest bidder and the access to decision makers is very limited?
Let me read this one a second.
Yeah, no problem. And Nathaniel, feel free to like in the chat, like elaborate, or if you have like specific things you're looking to cover.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. These ones are always fun, to say the least. You absolutely can still influence them through, this is more like a brand awareness way, but they have their structure, they have their process that you need to follow. So there's a couple things you can do. One is like, these are the big enterprises. You just need to get ahead of them long in advance. And the other side is development of relationships. Like these types of accounts, I would consider these like your strategic accounts. If you're a larger organization, you should have strategic account executives where they get paid a lot of money to close one deal a year. And that's done for a specific reason, because these deals are for these types of organizations where they're probably locking in 3, 5, 10-year contracts, $1 million+ deals and everything else. So, yeah, I know it's not a great answer for it. I don't deal too much in this space, so I'm probably not the best person to answer it either. But just based on my experience, what I've seen before, that would probably be the route that I would go, is like have marketing, do that cloud or the air coverage, make sure that you're aware within them, but continuing to drive those relationships, on-site visits, calling, emailing with that person who owns that relationship regularly, just to be consultative though. Not like, are you ready to buy yet? Are you ready to buy yet? When's that process starting up? But like just helping their business in general. That's what's going to help you float to that top of the list, and they'll push you more when they do have to, have 10 people on their list, but they'll be making sure that you're at the top of the list every time with them when they have those.
And that's something I was going to add or thought about. It's like not a space I play in or have like any experience in, but one of my questions would be like, does it always come, like if it always comes down to price, maybe there's not like a lot that can be done. But if there's always a shortlist gathering process, I feel like you could impact like usually that level of person is gonna spec out who they want on the shortlist. Like make sure you reach out to so and so or include them in the bid or whatever. And if it doesn't always come down, then are there other things of like quality, consistency? Like is there something that you do that stands out that other companies don't, and you can highlight that in your messaging or lead forward with that? So. I wish we could be more helpful, Nathaniel. If you have anything else we can be helpful with, please follow up with another question here. I'll take Robbie, and then I had a question come in from LinkedIn too. So Robbie wrote in from YouTube. Sweet. He runs our YouTube. What's your biggest lesson learned in 2024?
Oh, biggest lesson learned. I'll take two. I'll take a general one, and then I'll take a specific one to myself. General, macroeconomic conditions are a thing. No CFO likes to hear this. No exec likes to hear this. No sales leader, marketer, anyone likes to hear this. But it is a thing, and I'm not saying that you should place blame on that by any means, but you need to make sure that you can be flexible with that to understand, okay, like we haven't changed anything with who we're targeting with our offers, but we're seeing less buyers come in. We're seeing price sensitivity become more of a thing. You need to be willing to meet the market where they're at and not just say, we've always sold this rate, it'll come back. Like if you want to stay in the game with the market and continue to grow, you have to be flexible with that. So that's a general one, I would say. On the personal side, so our organization, we're very much like, we're creating a new category. It's different. We're different from what our incumbents do in the sense that many of them are just like traditional applicant tracking system. We do everything a recruiter could possibly need in one spot. They're used to 10 plus different tools. We're one. So why do you care? Why should anyone listening to this? Anyone that's in a similar position, this is just about like going to market in general, especially when we were talking about like that $2 to $3 million ARR example here. You're going to win early on with the innovators, with the early adopters. They love change. They want to see what's new, what's sexy, what's out there. And if they can't quite figure it out, they'll be quick to just chat into your CS team, to go to YouTube, to go to Google to figure it out. Well, we're starting to get to the crossing the chasm point, and we're seeing a lot of the early majority start to come in where they kind of see it, but they're just like, oh, that's too hard to figure out, or our team won't adopt this. We're scared of change. We don't like change. What we have now is good enough. And so big lesson there is you do have to, as your product matures, as your market matures, your marketing, your sales, your internal enablement teams, your CS teams, they need to mature with that, because we used to be able to take a more hands-off approach with our customers. Like, they'd figure it out. We could help them quick answer, like they're going to go and get on with their day. But with the early majority, the late majority, if you aren't able to help them on the spot, not only are they not going to go figure it out on their own like the other group would, but they're going to stop using the product, and they're probably going to churn after a certain amount of time. As you have these larger organizations that are just like, we have 40 users, 37 of them aren't using the product, and we're spending however much money. That's what is going to start that, and then you'll see the fallout as a result of that. So that's one where I'd say, like, being aware of where your product sits within the overall customer lifecycle is something that I've been getting into deeply this year.
That's awesome. We are exploring a lot of those same things at Databox, so it's cool to hear the way that you're thinking about those. We had a question, I hope I don't butcher your name. If I do, I'm sorry. From LinkedIn, Aurelian asks, how can we measure the effectiveness of our alignment efforts post-implementation?
Effectiveness of alignment efforts post-implementation.
I think they're talking about specifically sales and marketing alignment post implementing the plan.
Okay. So a couple of different ways. Do your sales, marketing, BDR leaders get along? When you put the three of them in a room together, are they all working towards the same goal? Are they able to have good conversations, not pointing fingers at, like, you're not pulling your weight, or why didn't this AE pick this up? So that's one. It's very qualitative, so to speak. But the other will be in those conversion rates that we were talking about, that marketing to sales handoff, the win rates. Another example, one of my favorites, is with like BDRs and marketing. I started my career as a BDR, so this one always hit home for me in the sense that I remember calling prospects, and there were two very different ways that they would answer the phone. I'd say, like, hey, it's Sam calling from Loxo. How's it going? Sam, from what? What do you do? I've never heard of that. Like, I don't have the time for this. Click, right? And they just hang up. And then you have the, oh, Sam from Loxo. Yeah, I see Matt stuff all over on the internet all the time. Like, perfect timing. I just listened to your podcast, saw a video, something else. Like, I'm not available right now, but call me back in 30 minutes. I'm jumping into a meeting, and then let's talk. And that right there is a function of when you have teams working well together, in the sense that, like, marketing isn't forcing that person to fill out a lead, like whether it's through a forum, to join a webinar or whatever. They're planting the seeds of what is it that Loxo does? How do we help solve the problems that they have? But talking about the problem itself, not like why you should use Loxo, why Loxo is the best, the ROI you'll get from us, but just helping them and speaking to all that in our marketing. So that way, when the BDR does call, they're familiar with the brand. They have a positive association with us because we're not acting like every other SaaS company that's trying to rip their wallet out from them, but like genuinely help them, educate them, inform them. And then the BDR, again, they continue that consultative approach where it's not, are you ready to get on a call with our AE next? But it's just like, oh, great. It's like, what are you struggling with right now? What can I help? Like, I talk to hundreds of recruiters like you every day. Like, what can I share with you?
Yeah.
Because we recognize that 95% of the market is not in the market. And it's not because they don't want to be, but they're in existing contracts. They're scared of change. They don't have the budget for it right now. So instead of trying to force them through prematurely, it's develop that relationship. So as soon as they are ready to buy, you're the first to come back to. They come back to that BDR, they come to the website, they fill out the form, whatever that is. But those are some of the different indicators that you can look at. And again, that one's a very like anecdotal, qualitative. You'll have to talk to your BDRs to understand what's the general sentiment of the calls. But those are some of the different mix of metrics that I look at.
All right. I think we're going to wrap here. We're going to give you 10 minutes to get to your next call. I know you squeezed us in the middle of a day. Okay. Awesome. Thank you again, Sam, for coming on. Really appreciate it.